Welcome to Work Life by Design. I'm your host, Mel Marsden. If the last few years have taught us anything, it's that change is inevitable and we no longer need to go to work to work. As a workplace dynamic strategist and the founder of Community, I draw back the curtains on my own business, the clients and projects that we deliver, along with tapping into the knowledge and insights from academics, business leaders and champions of change. I believe that our environments have the power to positively influence our behaviour and performance, inspiring our human potential. Hello and welcome back to the next season of the Work Life by Design podcast. This is season 5 and I'm pretty excited to be back because I have been on a little hiatus for about the last 5 months as we were welcoming in our new baby boy, Nash. So Nash was born in around mid-May and he is a delightful little guy and such a surprise to actually get a boy after having 2 older girls. So it's just been wonderful. So while we have been welcoming him into our family, I have not been doing the podcast because I wanted to make sure that I had the most amount of time with him while he was little. But now I'm ready and jumping to get back into this. What I want to do today is I want to give you a bit of a recap on where I've been over the last 5 months and what I've been up to, but also where we're heading and what's exciting about the podcast coming up for this next season. I shared with you guys in the last episode that I recorded before I went off to Babyland, and that was about how I'd kind of restructured the business. I'd taken the opportunity and the gift that had come with preparing my business for a baby and what I chose to do with that time and also what I wanted to do with my business so that I could spend as much time with him, given the situation that had occurred just prior to me having him and making the most of that opportunity. So 2 weeks after he was born, I started to gradually return to the business, but I did that in a very structured way and I had a very clear plan that I had laid out prior to going off on my very short 2 weeks of maternity leave, which I'm going to share with you in a future episode because I think it's really important that any of us who are working mums or running our own businesses, and even those who are preparing for an extended period of leave or dealing with maybe some chronic illness, this is a way that I think you can start to be really intentional about how you spend your time and put some structures in place and some boundaries for yourself just as much as for everyone else, because often you're the one who's going to break your own boundaries. So I'll share that with you in a future episode. But during this last 5 months, we have been, welcoming our new son into the family. We've also been promoting my youngest, Bailey. She turned 4 up into big sister status, which she has taken to brilliantly. She's loving her little brother and gives him plenty of kisses and cuddles, which is just delightful. And then I've also got my older daughter who's about to turn 12. And so we've been preparing her for starting at high school next year. And if there's any parents listening who have been preparing their children for that transition from primary school to high school, you'll know that all of those activities and orientation starts in the end of term 3. So we've been quite busy with sort of dual school activities at the moment. She's been joining choirs and attending, band practices and things and looking at joining water polo at her high school. So we've had to kind of adapt to both schools at the moment. So there's a bit going on. Chuck in the business on top of that. Plus we've been on the merry-go-round of illness that I'm sure everybody has been on this winter. Every time we've been off to the doctor with every child, the doctors have just told me how bad this winter particularly is. I feel like the poor little guy, Nash, has been sick, ever since he was born with all sorts of germs and bugs that have come through the household throughout that period of time. Touch wood though, we still have managed to avoid COVID, which I think is miraculous at this point in time, but we've certainly dealt with everything else that came with that. And we also had him diagnosed with a cow's milk protein intolerance, which has thrown another sort of kerfuffle into the whole mix as well. So there's been a bit of juggling, plus the business, plus clients, plus projects, and just general everyday kind of life. But what's really exciting for me is that I'm back here feeling really energized, really motivated to get back in and for the new sort of evolution of the business, the new season of the podcast, and all the exciting things that I've actually got planned as we start to kind of re-emerge from our little bit of a bubble and a cocoon. And it's been quite full within that period of time, but I've really enjoyed it and I feel quite reinvigorated, which I think is kind of funny being a new mum again with that, but it's definitely given me some space and some time to really think about what I want to do going forward, how I want to spend my time, and giving me a real amount of clarity. And one of the things that's helped me through that period in getting that clarity is I've been reading a book called Do Less by an author called Kate Northrup. Now, the whole concept of the book isn't that we go and sit on the couch and absolutely do nothing. It's about how can we be far more intentional with the time that we do have to create more by actually doing less. And part of that is about subscribing to the 80-20 principle of, 20% of our effort delivers 80% of our impact and our return. And so it's about understanding where are we putting in that 20% of effort that is giving us that 80% return, and how can we then be far more intentional about capturing that and utilizing it. She talks about time being cyclical as opposed to linear. Every year we go around the sun and we change things up, and things go around and they go around. And she talks about with each evolution, it's actually not a straight line, but as we go around in a circle, we're actually spiraling upwards, because while we might be faced with similar challenges or similar opportunities, each time we approach that opportunity or that challenge, we're actually coming at it with more wisdom, with more information, more experience, because we've been there before. And so we're not staying in this flat, stagnant place. We're constantly evolving, and we're evolving in an upward motion. She also talks about adding in there the mother lode, which we've had, Dr. Ali Young come and speak to us about before. It's all about understanding that impact of all of those things that we carry, and particularly as women, as mums, all of that mental load that, it's our job to look after the kids and to take on sort of more of that household responsibility as well. So breaking all of that down has been really helpful in me capturing some of my own thoughts around what I wanted and where I wanted to go, and how I can sort of come back into the business and be really, really invigorated about it. And a big part of that was around the fact that I needed to really connect back with my intention. Now, I shared with you back at the beginning of the year, each year at the start of the year, I set myself an intention for how I want the year to feel. And this year I set the intention of I wanted spaciousness. I wanted to feel like I wasn't being pressured. I wasn't constrained. I wasn't being, forced into things. I wanted to have that space around me to really enjoy life and, to be able to be flexible and go with the flow and really enjoy it. Often we come up against things where we don't feel that way. And that's where that word has been really grounding for me, because every time I've felt overwhelmed, I've felt trapped into a corner or pushed, or there's, way too much on my plate, I've been able to come back to that word and go, this isn't how I intended my year to be. I wanted this year to be spacious. What can I do to reassess my situation? And, how can I make some really informed choices around what I want to do with my time? Having read the book and having thought through those options, this is a way that I've been able to then really get really clear on things. And that clarity has also then led me back to reconnecting back in with my values. And one of my core values is freedom. And to me, freedom is having that flexibility to live a life in flow, one where it feels like it's of my own choosing. And I know that for myself, when I get into that state of overwhelm and I feel like I've got way too much on my plate, I'm feeling everything but free. And so it's about being conscious then to how can I get back to that sense of freedom. And one of the other values that I have is around relationships, and I want to be able to nurture my relationships. And I know that when I am dealing with all of those loads, from the business load, making sure that the business is performing and it's the operations and the clients are being delivered on and that the work is being delivered, and then we've got the family load as well, those relationships can start to get strained as well. And that feels out of alignment for me, because that's something that I really value, is I value nurturing those relationships and being able to invest in them in a way that feels good for me and I know feels good for the other people. And when I get into those situations where I'm feeling overwhelmed, I don't feel like I'm nurturing those relationships. So I'm really living out of alignment with my own values there. So it's been about connecting back into a lot of that stuff. And that 80-20 principle is really, really valuable. And I encourage everyone to kind of look at it. And you need to take the emotion and the ego out of that situation, because a lot of things that we do because of our own ego. It pumps us up, or there's an emotional attachment to things. But when you're looking at your business and you need to understand, the time that you have, where can you invest that wisely, and where can you then get the most amount of impact in return for that time that you invest? And, this is an exercise I've done in the business for a long time, is doing an analysis of the clients that I have and, what is the effort that goes into that project? Are we spending more hours on that project than another project? Is it where we estimated it? What is the profit of that project? And when we do these analyses, what you can start to see is that the 80-20 principle does ring true. We often spend 20% of our effort creating 80% of our outcome. This is an audit that I've needed to do on my own business. And what that's led me to is looking at things in a different way. And I shared with you in that Preparing for Babyland, the gift of that. And the gift that came with that was that with some of my team, moving on, that gave me some space to really make some new decisions without feeling like I was needing to be responsible for ensuring, there was enough work coming in to continue to meet their payroll requirements and, keeping everyone busy and engaged. It just gave me a bit more room to relook at things and restructure things and recreate what I would want the business to be going forward. And with that less time, wanting to have baby cuddles and being around for naps and, particularly with juggling all of this illness, I've got a finite amount of time that I can invest. And I wanted to be really intentional with what I did with that time. And to be intentional about what I did with that time, I really needed to get clear on what I wanted to do with it. I find that when I've got that clarity around how I want to spend my time, it's because I then understand, what do I enjoy doing? What is my zone of genius? And where am I really adding immense value to my clients and to the people around me? And I shared with you in one of my previous episodes called Work With Me, all of the ways that you could work with me. And it is quite broad. Like, I have a lot of things that I enjoy doing, and I really enjoy that. I'm not going to apologize for that because I like the variety of that. I like being able to have my fingers in many different pies. But what I've now needed to do is be really clear about how I'm going to apportion that time to those different parts of my products and services. And when I started to look at where my real zone of genius is and where my value is, what became really, really clear for me and what really emerged was that I needed to restructure my business. I needed to look at my products and services and how I delivered them, but I also needed to look at my team. So if we start with the products and services, what that meant was that I really enjoy working on the workplace strategy and the concept development of projects. I like helping organizations completely reimagine what is possible for their business. I like to go in, help them tip it upside down and put the pieces back together in a way that now works for the way that the business works. What is the workflow? What does those workforce planning structures look like? What is the rhythms and routines of the business? How are people working? What are the tools that they need? And helping them understand and assemble that, and then wrapping an environment around it that enables that really inspires the people that work within it to perform in a way that works for them. That comes down to how we plan that space. What is the brand and the values, and how do we want people to feel when it comes in, and how do we actually make that happen? How do we infuse that into that physical environment? So that's the part of the project that I really enjoy doing. I know that I add immense value to that process as well. And that really is my zone of genius. And so that's where I really wanted to be focusing my attention in going forward. But as a business community, we actually deliver everything from end to end. So we do the workplace strategy, we do the design, we do the documentation, the tender assessments and negotiation, the project management, right through to the change transformation at the other end. And we have partners that we work through that process, but we also had a full team of people that delivered on that. And when you have a small team in a business, there's a lot of skill sets that are required to be able to deliver all of those parts of those projects. But what happens is that while you've employed someone to be an absolute expert in this part of a project, when you're a small team, there are parts of that project that everyone needs to be able to pitch in and work on that aren't within their zone of genius. It's not the thing that they're a master at. And with that comes challenges. So they don't enjoy doing their job as much because you're putting them outside of their comfort zone in a way that doesn't feel familiar or achievable for them. They start to feel like they're not succeeding because they're working in an area that's really uncomfortable and it's hard, and that becomes mentally taxing and quite depleting. But also then we're starting to spend more time on things that could be done more efficiently if someone was a real expert in that space. So there's business challenges and there's human challenges in this. It requires more time from me to be across all of these parts of the business because there needs to be more support and more oversight in different elements where people aren't necessarily as skilled or as confident to be able to do those parts of a project. And so you end up having a bunch of people delivering these projects where they're really great at one aspect or, a multiple of aspects, but there are other areas that they're filling gaps that are really outside of their comfort zone. And the reason we can't then get other people in to come and help fill those gaps is because often, you've put all of your energy and your financial resources into employing the people that are on your team. So you need to use those resources before you can bring in external resources to support the delivery of those projects. So it creates a bunch of different problems and challenges within a small business to be able to deliver on all of that. You also then start taking on work that no one really wants to do because we know that we've all got to pay the bills and keep the lights on. So we all do it. And so what happens is we all get a little bit tired and things don't quite work the way that we want. And, when the team started to sort of self-select out prior to Nash coming into the world, it really gave me the space to look at how the function of the business is working and reconsider the business and really restructure how I wanted to do business. And if I reflect back on where I started the business 10 years ago and what I wanted to achieve then, we really wanted to be a company that was focused on workplace strategy, and we wanted to work with a range of different experts in the freelance world and bring and assemble teams in a collaborative environment together to deliver on each and every project. Now, 10 years ago, that wasn't possible, which is hence the reason this business never actually evolved in the way that I intended, because the skills weren't there in a freelance manner or in a contractual manner that I could actually engage with to deliver on the projects the way that I wanted to. So we ended up building out the business with an employee team. However, COVID has completely changed the landscape on that. So there are far more skilled individuals with really honed workplace experience operating their own shows who I can then bring together to collaborate with to create our A team. And when we've got our A team, what that means is that we're all sitting in our zone of genius. We can bring together the team that assembles the right people. So everyone then is working in a way that feels good for them. They all enjoy work. We all feel like we're succeeding. There's fewer errors on projects because we're all doing the things that we know we're immensely good at and we add value to, and therefore we're also far more efficient. It's enabled us to really bring this model together where I'm then not needing to be involved in every step of the project because we're bringing together people who are highly skilled at their part of the piece of the puzzle that needs to be put together to deliver on that project. It also means that I can really focus on my own zone of genius and be focused on that workplace strategy and concept development. And I can support other larger organizations by partnering and collaborating with them to fill those gaps within their businesses as well. So I think that there's a real opportunity, and we've been talking about the gig economy for a really long time, but I think in my view and in our industry, COVID has accelerated that, and there's really become much more of a collaborative feel in the industry around how we can all start to work together. But what I've also been really empowered by through this whole process and knowing exactly where I want to be spending my time and my energy and the things that I'm going to add value to is that now I am far more empowered to say no to the things that aren't in that wheelhouse anymore. So, if someone comes to me with an opportunity that isn't quite right for me, I can now very politely say, look, thank you so much for the opportunity, but I don't think that's going to be the right fit. However, let me introduce you to someone who can support you in that, because I have this network of people that can enable that client to be able to deliver something successfully. And where I can add value to a part of that process, absolutely, most definitely would love to do that. But then bringing in other resources and helping them, because I'm so much more clear on the value that I can add to a project and the sandpit that I actually want to play in. Now, that's also meant I've had to streamline and pause different parts of my product offerings as well. So, as I mentioned earlier in the Work With Me episode, I've got quite a variety of things that I can support people with, and I really enjoy doing that. I just have to be quite conscious about where and how I spend my time and the volume of those different aspects and what I do. And it's meant that I've actually now gone and I've paused the Work-Life Lounge because I want to make a bigger impact. And I feel that the podcast enables me to reach far more people and spread such a wider message. So the whole Work-Life Lounge principle was about empowering people to understand how to redesign their life to work for them. In this opportunity, what we've all been given, how can we create a work life that works for us? And I want to create a wider audience with that, and I can do that through the podcast. So with this finite amount of time, I'm relaunching the podcast. I'm bringing to you some really exciting guests as we're going into this next season to help be able to deliver that message far more broadly in that respect, but then also be able to tailor down some of my other services and be really clear on where I can actually contribute and add value to all of my clients. But the other thing that I have been carving out time for in my 20 percenters is I am almost finished writing my book. So I'm super excited about this because this book has been a work in progress for probably the last 4 years, and it's been at that 80% complete for probably the last 18 months. And, you know, what better time than to finish a book is when you've got a newborn baby at home. And so I've been very consciously carving out time for that as well. And it will be coming out into the world in early next year. So I'm really excited to be getting out there because this book is all about how we can design a workplace that inspires the potential of our people. Now, again, COVID has created this whole Pandora's box of opportunity around hybrid working and the way that we work going forward. We've got new management theories that sit there, and our workplaces are the enablers of all of these things. So there's so much more research that is available now because we have been opened up to this concept of the impact that our environments have on our behavior, our performance, and our businesses. And this book is about how to tie all that together. So I'm very excited to be bringing that out next year. It will help you understand some of these dynamic workplace principles that we're dealing with and the way that you can then create and structure an environment to really enable and support your business in delivering on that next level of performance. So I'm really excited about this next season of the podcast, and we're going to be looking at everything from like what's next in the workplace and how our businesses are adapting and evolving to suit our new climate. We're going to be looking at what skills are we going to need. So what are those soft skills that our people are going to need? How can we support them in getting them? We're going to be looking at what all of the opportunities are that we can then be embracing. What are the ideas that we can be taking from other industries and embedding them into workplace? One of these is going to be around, what can we take from the hospitality industry to really enhance that whole experience of work for our employees in our workplace environments? And, we're going to be looking at how others are making this work. We all love to know what everyone else is doing. And so we're going to be tapping into some of those business leaders who are at the forefront and being quite progressive in some of these spaces to really look at how they have been transforming their workplaces so that you can be inspired with some ideas that you can take back and put into your own as well. So some of our guests, we're going to be talking to everyone from academics to business leaders. We're going to be talking for innovators through to change makers. And we're also going to be talking through to landlords and experience designers as well. So quite a diverse range of guests in there, bringing us great new ideas around how we can really enhance our whole experience of work through our management styles, our own personal principles, but also through our workplace environment. So super excited about that. It is so great to be back here with you. I'm so excited for this next season, and it's really going to be taking some of those concepts that I'm going to be sharing with you in the book to the next level. So I'm really excited about that. And as always, if there is anything that you would like me to cover on the podcast, or there is a guest that you'd like me to interview because you'd love to be that fly on the wall listening in, or if you'd love my support personally or within your business and your organization around taking your work and your work life and your workplace to the next level, I'd love to hear from you. You can get in touch. You can find me on Instagram at Melmar, or you can send me an email at melissa@melissamarsden.com.au. But that's it for today. Thank you for joining me again as we kick off season 5, and I can't wait to be sharing with you some of our guest insights in the coming weeks.